Hello friends, and welcome back for another YouTube video. This is Cassie, and today I'm going to be making 4 cards using the August 2020 Create an Inkspire card kit. So let's go ahead and just jump right into what we're doing. I'm going to be using this texture paste that came in the kit. This is a transparent gloss texture paste, and I've put this onto my glass media mat using one of the little palette knives that came with it, and I put some dye-based ink into it. So that was a Reinker that I had, and that is the Hurley Prom Queen ink. And then I am just going to scrape this across my piece of paper. This is some of the paper that came in the kit, and I cut that down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I realized there's plenty of that paste left over, so I'm going to grab another sheet of paper, and we're going to do sort of the same thing because I don't want to waste any of that. But I will clean up my mess, and then we'll do it again, put a little bit more using the back of that palette, and then we're going to grab the Hurley ink Reinker called Slippery When Wet, which always cracks me up. And then I'll just mix that around. So this paste is great because it does dry transparent, but you can add color to it. So what you're seeing there isn't exactly how it's going to dry. And I will tell you that my biggest suggestion for you is to actually try to let it dry naturally, especially if you're going to be using the embossing powder that came with this. So that is my suggestion. All right, for the third color, we're grabbing some Remember Me, Hurley Reinker. And so now I've got some pink, I've got that yellow, and now I have a blue. And when these dry, like I said, they'll dry transparent and a little darker than what you're seeing there. So that's pretty cool. And then I'll take the leftovers and put that on that last piece. I don't actually use this other second piece today, but I will save it and use it for something later. While this is wet, I'm going to cover this with that embossing powder that came in the kit. This is the holographic embossing powder. It's clear, but it has a lot of shimmer and shine in it. And my mistake in this is that I'm impatient. So I wanted to heat set this and move on. And you can absolutely do that, I suppose, but then you're going to need to let it sort of dry on its own and then come back in with your heat tool one more time. So doing this isn't actually embossing the embossing powder, if that makes sense. It is heating what's underneath and kind of drying that, but your best bet is to let this stuff dry, even with the embossing powder on it. Just set it off to the side, let it dry, and then when it's dry, you can then heat it with your heat tool to make sure that that embossing powder melts. So that is my suggestion to you. I'm going to stamp out the images twice onto some cardstock, and then I went ahead and colored those and cut those out. I did that while I was watching some TV, so that is why you're not seeing the coloring. But you'll notice that this is dry now, and it is a little bit darker. So that is very cool, but it's transparent. You know, you can definitely see through it into the cardstock that we're using. I'm going to trim this down just a little bit because I want this panel to be 4 inches by 5 1/4 so that there will be a nice little border around it when I put that onto my card base, which is just going to be some more of that cardstock that came in the kit. I scored that at 4 1/4 inches, and so this is a side folding A2 size card. And we have a little packet of those crayons that we're going to put on there. I do want to get my sentiment ready to go, and I'm going to use the sentiment from the add-on. So there is an add-on, you can buy that separately. You can also buy the stamp sets separately as well, but obviously it's going to be a better deal if you just go ahead and get the kit. And then if you want to add the add-on, you can do that too. So I loved that relax and color, which is sort of what I like to do when I want to relax. So I'm going to cover that with some Alabaster embossing powder, and I'm actually going to do this with all of my sentiments, so I won't show you all of those, but this is how I'm doing it. I used a magic powder bag on that black cardstock that came in the kit, stamped it down using some embossing ink, which is just a clear sticky ink, and then put the Alabaster embossing powder over the top, and then I heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And then I'm going to take this and put this into my guillotine trimmer if I can, and then trim all of those sentiments down. So when using that guillotine trimmer, I will typically try to line up the edge of the word right with that clear edge. And then I'll also try to use the grid that's on the guillotine trimmer to help me make sure that everything is nice and straight and I don't cut it crooked. I am cutting that crooked, but that's because I want that crooked. So I'll trim that down, and then I'm even going to trim a little bit more off of the top. And then we'll get ready to start adhering all of our pieces to that panel once everything is cut down. I want to put some foam tape on the back of that because I do want to pop that up just a little bit, and also it'll help it stick to that texture paste that's underneath. And I did leave it a little bit long on the left-hand side, and that's because I'm going to go ahead and trim that down when I'm ready. But I will cover the crayons with the foam tape as well, and I'll peel all that off. And that's just the foam tape from Arteza. It's a very good foam tape. The only problem that I have with it is the release paper is, it's just, I'm gonna be honest, it's annoying. It sticks to my hands and it drives me crazy. It's just super clingy. So yeah, not a fan of that. But I do like the foam tape, so I can deal with it. I'm going to use my glass mat to try and line up my sentiment, make sure that I have that fairly straight on there. And then I'll peel off the release paper on my final one and stick that one down as well. And then we'll turn that over and we'll trim that off with our scissors. And then we're going to attach this to our card base here in a second. And we're just going to use some liquid glue to do that. You could use foam tape if you wanted, or some sort of other adhesive, but I like the liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. And then I'm going to grab a crayon and one of the little cards and put that on the inside. So we have something on the inside. And then that's going to actually finish off our first card. I think that texture paste is really fun, and of course that holographic embossing powder is fabulous. Okay, for card number 2, we are definitely making a slimline. You knew it was coming. So I did grab some blue cardstock that I had out of my stash. I'm going to trim off 4 inches from that so that will leave my base to be 7 inches by 8.5 inches. And then I'll take this 4-inch piece and I'm going to make my front panel with it. So I've got the Heffy Doodle Stitched Outline Trio die. Love this, it's fairly new. And I'm going to tack down a couple of those dies from there. It's an outline stitch. I'll tack that down with a little bit of purple tape. And then I'll tack down the inside piece using some purple tape as well, just try to center that up. And I think this die is fabulous because it'll cut out those little pieces, and you'll see here in a second after I run it through my die cutting machine. You'll have these little 3 extra pieces left over. They're almost like postage stamps. You could save those for something later. And then you've got this beautiful stitched outline all around your panel, which, like I said, is fabulous. Alright, so I'll clean up my mess, and then I'm going to trim down some of the pattern paper that came in the kit. They're all beautiful pieces, and I'm going to trim 2 inches because that will cover each of those squares. So it's perfect. It's 6 by 6 paper. I was able to cut a whole line, just 2 inches, and then, 2 inches by 2 inches. So perfect. And as I said, because this is 7 inches by 8.5 inches, I'm going to score it at 3.5 inches, which will make it fit into a normal business size envelope. And then I am doing the sentiment basically like I said before, but for the word colorful, I do decide to fussy cut all around it, just leaving a little black border. And I love the way that looks. It'll show off a lot more of the background, which was the point, and I just thought it looked pretty cool, so we're going to go with that. Now this might have been adding a little bit more work to myself, but I had a plan for this. I put the purple tape on the front and I was able to attach all 3 of those pieces that way, and the reason I wanted to do that is because this was the easiest way I could find. I'm sure there's an easier way, but this was the easiest way I found to glue down those with those squares without kind of guessing, and I didn't want to guess. So I just make sure that that glue is on there, and then I can carefully peel off the purple tape, and then we can peel this away. Now the reason I wanted to do that is because I do want to take that front panel and cover the back of it with some foam tape. I want that to be popped up just a little bit, and then I'll peel off all the release paper on that. And yes, I was very excessive with that. I didn't want any sagging, so there's foam tape all over that panel. Like I said, no sagging. And then we'll just turn that over and stick that down to the front. Now, once you get this stuff down, there's really no turning back. It is on there. And thankfully, I got it on there fairly straight. And then I'll decide which pieces I want to put on there, and I'll take that Nouveau Deluxe glue and adhere it down. You'll notice, obviously, that some of those pieces are going to stick over the part that is recessed, and so in order to make sure that there is no sagging, I will have to use some foam tape on those, but the brush and the crayon I thought were fine. There isn't enough of the hangover to make it, sag too much, but there definitely will be for this little palette, the paint palette. So I'll use some foam tape and a little bit of liquid glue, and then we'll do the same thing with the pencil. Just put some foam tape on that and then a little bit of liquid glue on the bottom. And then for our word colorful, we're going to have to do the same thing. So we'll determine where exactly it's going to need the foam tape, and we'll peel off all the release paper on those pieces. And then we'll use liquid glue in between so that way it adheres to the panel that is popped up. And I love it because it is really colorful. That pattern paper back there is just fabulous. And then we'll attach down a couple of the extra pieces that I had because we got to do something on the inside, and then that will finish off card number 2. You knew a Slimline was coming, and hold on because another one is. For card number 3, I'm going to go ahead and get my card base ready, which again is a Slimline, so I'm scoring that at 3.5 inches. And then so closed, it'll be 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And then we'll set that off to the side because I do want to work on the panel. I'm going to take, once again, that stitched outline trio, and I'm going to cut down a panel, just run that through my die cutting machine, and then I'll have this nice stitched border around my panel, which will fit nicely on the front of my card base. I'll take the stencil, and I'm going to pull out some inks that I want to use. These are all Simon Hurley inks. And then we're going to sponge over the top of those ink spots, which is so fun. This is just a cute little stencil. And even though this is Slimline, we can move this, so we're going to work with it. All right, I started off with bee sting and should have taped it down, but I will. I'm going to grab my purple tape and tack this down so that way I don't have this moving anymore. And then we'll move on to the color, that's Traffic Cone. Our next color is Sike. Our green is Later Gator. Our blue is Clear Skies. And I'm using my Trinity brushes with these. And then our final color is Crown Me. And then I'm going to pick up the stencil and move it again, and we'll do the whole same process. Now I'm going to put the stencil back at the top, lining everything up again, and I'll grab that transparent texture paste, and I'm going to take that same palette knife that I was using and put this over the top. Now, I did use dye-based inks, so it will pick up some of that color. Because I'm not like, you know, working it too hard and squishing that paint around or the texture paste around, it's only picking up minimal amounts and it's not really transferring it to the other areas. So it's working. This is working fine. But if you really work it too much and you still have that stencil all dirty, which I probably should have just cleaned it off, then you are going to get some transfer. So then I'm going to pick up the stencil ever so carefully once I have that part done. And this was a gamble, but we made it work. And then I'm going to line it up on the bottom few splats. And then we'll tape that down and clean up our glass mat real quick so that I can move our piece up. And we'll do the same process with the last few paint spots that are showing. Just want to make sure that that's good and lined up. And then once that's done, which was really easy, I'm going to take that panel and we're going to cover that once again with our holographic embossing powder. I just love this process. That holographic embossing powder has a lot of uses, not just for texture paste like this, but yeah, definitely makes that texture paste pop even more. And then again, my suggestion is to just let that sit and dry on its own. It probably shouldn't take that long, but I'm so impatient, so I'm heating this up, and I will have to go back over it again and heat it up again. But I did have some bubbling underneath, didn't really bother me. And I do believe that once that's dry, those colors will be a little bit more vibrant because that gloss will be a lot more transparent. I'm going to take some of the paper that came in the kit and just make some little slivers of it because I want to have some of that on that left-hand side. So I'll take my liquid glue, put that all over the back, and in here down one of these pieces. Yes, that will leave a seam, but I'm going to cover the seam. And so I'm going to line up one of the red parts with that green, and yes, you can sort of see the seam there, but once I cover that with my words, you won't be able to see it. We'll trim off our excess and save that because we're going to use it on the inside. And then I did, you know, stamp and heat emboss all of my sentiments and cut those out and put some foam tape on the back of them. And these words come from that add-on set. I really love that little add-on set. It's just perfect. And so I like how it says, "I'm just a girl who likes to color." It's true. I do. And then I'll set that off to the side, and then we're going to work on the inside of our card. So I'll take those leftover slivers, and we're going to add that on the right-hand side. And line it up again. So obviously we are going to have a seam, but that, again, doesn't bother me because we'll cover that up with some words, or you could cover it up with an image or whatever. So sort of pick patterns that you know that you can, you know, add to each other. And so then the words that I cut out are "create pretty things." And so then those will cover up that seam very nicely. And it'll be hard to tell that that wasn't one little piece that I cut out. And then of course I have to add the little paintbrush with the paint palette. That's going to go on the bottom left-hand side, trimming off the excess that we have there. And then we'll just use that same liquid glue to adhere down these last pieces to the inside of our card base. And then once those are adhered, that'll finish the inside of the card. And then I'll grab some of that liquid glue and put that on the front panel, or the back of the front panel, and adhere that down to our card base. So you could use liquid glue. Actually, I suggest using some sort of strong adhesive, any sort of adhesive, but this was a little warped from the texture paste. It worked out, it's fine, and that's going to finish off card number 3. Card number 4 is going to be a super quick and easy one. I already have my card base ready to go, and I'm just trimming down some of this pattern paper to be about 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, so it's a nice little square. We're going to stick that right on that upper portion of our card base, just using some liquid glue. And our crayons were already colored, and our sentiments were already stamped and embossed. So all those need is a little bit of foam tape behind them. We're going to adhere down the crayons with that same liquid glue, and then add our foam tape to the back of our sentiments. So these were, yeah, very quick and easy card to make, and I feel like you could just make a ton of little cards like this. And then I'll adhere those down to the front of my card, and that's going to finish off card number 4. Like I said, super quick and easy, really. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at all the cards that I made today. I would love to know what you think, which one might have been your favorite. As far as I know, this kit is still available, so I'll have it linked down below if it's something that you're interested in. But I'd, again, love to know what you think. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.